It's on. Welcome to IDAGIO Live, the place where classical music happens. My name is Gerald Preinfalk. I'm the saxophone player of Klangforum Wien, and I have a very, very special guest and friend, now online, Bernhard Lang, and we will talk about 2017's premiere of his remix of Parsifal called ParZeFool. We will listen to some excerpts of his pieces, vice versa to the original, which is very interesting, I think. And yes, every Sunday evening, Klangforum Wien introduces a new composer, the series about a musician from the ensembles chatting with world-leading composers about their work and their unique view into music. And this is, this time, a very unique view of music, I would say. And I want to start with the history of this work, ParZeFool, not Parsifal, because this tradition I don't want to touch, but I want to touch this tradition of the making of how this idea and how courageous you have to be to touch this tremendous giant of music, Parsifal from Richard Wagner. So welcome, Bernhard. Nice to see you.
Hello, Gerald.
So please, can you talk? I know you can talk very exclusively about your work, and you're a professor in Graz, so you used to talk to many students for a long time, and I hope I can put in some questions during your talk. And I'm really curious to listen to your story. How did this idea come from, and when and where? Can you please tell us?
I have to start just with a short comment that it's a great pleasure to do this discussion with you, since Gerald was a participant in my first opera at Graz in 2003. That's Theater of Repetition. He was also very prominent in the composition in the famous saxophone solo of the second movement, and he accompanied me. He was a companion through all my music theater productions, all the way with Klangforum up to ParZeFool. And for me, it was self-understanding that Gerald had to have a crucial role in this piece, and I nicknamed him my Heldentenor in ParZeFool, because he does the incredible tenor solo at the beginning of the second act, which got scene applause in all performances. And so this is really fun to discuss this with you. And we are amidst an ongoing collaboration, which ranges from virtuosic solo pieces to duos with piano and saxophone, to a saxophone concerto with orchestra and jazz band. So we are busy. We too are busy. We are friends and have a lot of projects. But back to ParZeFool. How did it come about? And for me, the very interesting thing about this whole birth of ParZeFool is that it's in itself closely related to the Parsifal story. Why? It's all about Jonathan Meese. Jonathan Meese had been invited in Bayreuth to do Parsifal by Richard Wagner, which was for him a kind of mission, a holy mission, a dream, an ideal, and he had arrived at the peak of his life ambition doing this Parsifal. And he had already developed costumes, imaginary, scaffolding. I saw all this in his studio, but due to reasons we won't discuss here, he was expelled from the Gralsburg from Bayreuth. And he became a kind of fool, a kind of Parsifal, who had to walk in the wild to find back to his destination. And he walked and came to Vienna. And there is a beautiful opera house in our city, that's the Theater an der Wien, with a lot of tradition. And I was happy to do some operas there. And the theater goes back to Mozart, and it's a very, very important and very, very nice place, especially also for the teams and the people to work there. It's really fun. So the idea was to do the original Parsifal in a kind of castrated version with a small orchestra, in a small arrangement for the performance of Jonathan Meese. And for the ambition of Vienna Festwochen, there were soon voices to be heard which said, my God, this is really not enough for a huge new project for the Festwochen. So I was addressed and asked if I could do that, because I had done a lot of rewriting existing pieces during the last decade with a monadology series, starting with a monadology series, and I did a 70 minutes rewriting of the Bruckner Symphony, first Bruckner Symphony in Donaueschingen some years before. So they asked me. I was busy. I couldn't agree. I couldn't jump in. But funny as it is, the very commission I was working on was delayed and shifted to another year, so I could come in. And here we went. And then I learned about Jonathan Meese, and I was pretty suspicious in the beginning, since I really don't want to be involved in any political assertions or inclinations I don't completely agree with. So I visited him, I made his acquaintance, and he absolutely convinced me that he is a straight guy and not a funny person with strange inclivities and whatever. So we became friends, and I had the pleasure to see all his works in Berlin, in his fantastic workspace in this waterworks in Berlin on Prenzlauer Berg, and came back completely inspired. And this was the beginning.
This is nice. But may I put in? But he's not an open director, so an opera director. So he's not actually very experienced in actually guiding from a regisseur or a director's point of view. But how is that then possible? As an artist, he's tremendous. I saw, of course, I knew him before. But how could you put these words together? Because this is quite responsible to work, to create pictures, to create scenery. Especially, how was it in this case?
Yes, it's as a composer, you have learned to be a diplomatic person, especially on music theater. And there is the directorship, and there is the composer, and whatever. And Jonathan Meese is a very straightforward and honest person. And he told us, I am not a director, and I don't know how to direct operas. With the knowledge that he already did a Wolfgang Riem opera before. I met Wolfgang Riem recently in Germany, and he told me, yeah, I worked with Jonathan Meese. He did another piece of mine. And so he said, this is too much for me. So he got an assistant from Bayreuth, Wolfgang, who actually did the directing. And Jonathan focused on performing on stage, impersonating Parsifal, drawing on a live screen during the performance, and doing all the visual objects, creating the visual objects of the performance. And I think this was in itself a very, very strong contribution to the staging, which absolutely showed his handwriting. And I would say it was a very, very strong sign of Jonathan Meese's, which appeared on stage. And it also was mainly understood as this. And the question of directorship was a little bit pushed in the background by this. But as I said, the advantage of the whole thing was that it did not attract so much audience from Regietheater as audience from the arts, from the visual arts.
Yeah, since it's such a huge guy, yeah, it's amazing. And there's one thing I remember you told me, which was a little strange to see on one or two scenes. Jonathan was walking through the stage as well, so he was putting himself on the scene. Why? Because this could be, I mean, this you could take as maybe too eccentric, or you could understand this in very different ways. But why, in this case, he did this?
Yes, it's a little bit more. It's occurring quite often in the piece because one of the singers is impersonating him, is impersonating Jonathan, yeah. And the Gurnemanz looks like Jonathan Meese. And then he wears this wig and the blue suit and the slacks. He looks like Jonathan. And then as you said, Jonathan walks right in, and it was Jonathan's idea to be Parsifal, that he is impersonating the Parsifal, which is kind of doubled because we have a real Parsifal, Daniel Kloger, on stage. And this was a bit confusing, absolutely. And we did not in any way work against this confusion. No, we added to the confusion. So I overwrote the original libretto, which was projected in white letters on the left side of the stage. And then Jonathan wrote over my libretto his own entrances. He rewrote my libretto, and his comments were visible on the right side of the stage in red letters. So many people couldn't make head or tails from all this. And but on the other hand, it was a continuation of this process of writing, overwriting, because basically Wagner overwrote Wolfram von Eschenbach, the medieval drama. So the Wagner Parsifal, you see it from the writing. He deviates in the writing. He makes a variant of the original. Is the Wolfram's Parsifal seen through Wagner's eyes, and also bringing in himself with all his errors and wanderings and looking for the Holy Grail. This is Wagner too, himself. And again, what happened here now, it was me rereading Wagner and Jonathan Meese rereading me, and so a stacking of layers of meaning, of semantic strata, which created some kind of riddle, perhaps. It's something enigmatic. The result is something enigmatic, and sometimes I really called it a mystic opera, an opera which is a mystery of sorts.
Very nice. Bernhard, maybe now is the time for really listening a little bit from the original compared to your to the Parsifal version. So
Excellent idea.
maybe for the audience, it might be a little irritating when you see us listening to music, but we will dance to it, so it will be fine. So
yes, now for some minutes without Lang.
We are now going to listen the beginning of the second act. You kindly put me in this position of improvising, which I love, and you know I love. So it's really a nice thing. But before, I want to play a little bit of the original. So from the beginning of the second act till the first words of
Klingsor.
Klingsor, of course. I studied so much. It's Klingsor's, yeah. Watching the Blumenmädchen. So I'm gonna put forward and I'm gonna play a few minutes, please. Do you hear this?
Very softly.
Very softly, very softly. Very softly, sorry.
You have to
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think
yes,
I get it.
That's the trick, yeah.
Die Zeit ist da.
So
now's the time.
Now's the time. Later in history, there's another important now's the time tune. So this was original and from 1951. It's available on IDAGIO. We just play music, of course, from IDAGIO, available on IDAGIO. And since a couple of days, this music is also available. Bernhard Lang's Parsifal. I'm gonna put a little bit forward, so not directly from the beginning. So Bernhard Lang's Parsifal, opening the second act, Die Zeit ist da. Die Zeit ist da.
Ja, genau. Sehr schön. Sehr schön. Unglaublich.
That's so strange to listen to this, but it's very funny. Really, really nice. I like it so much.
There's a very nice anecdote from one of the Berlin performances, or I think I don't remember, Vienna or Berlin, and there was the Austrian composer Gerd Kür in the audience, and when you finished your solo, he could not refrain from saying, "Wow!" very audible in the audience, which created quite a laugh. I remember, because he's usually a very quiet person, but it really escaped him. He said, "Wow!" in this very quiet moment after the solo. And this I remember this very well. Yes. Okay, so let's get back to business. Yeah.
I want to know the concept of overwriting. You touched it before. You said you just overwrite, and it has overwriting of different layers. But how does? Can we go in a little bit musical detail? It's is you said before you're doing the harmonic overlaying and also in time. So you respect the time frame of the original, and do you do some special harmonic overlays? Could you explain this? Because I understood it somehow, but about these overtones, and so please tell us what you actually did in the composition.
Right. The first thing is the time frame, concerns the time frame. We had a discussion with Jonathan Meese. He said he would love to have the original time, the original length of Parsifal. So I found out there is a kind of time chart, like with skiing, of the length of Parsifal performances. And on one end there's Toscanini, and then the other end is Pierre Boulez. And the winner is Pierre Boulez because he does the shortest Parsifal. And I decided to, since it's a really huge work of 4 hours, nearly 4 hours, I went for the shortest version. So we agreed it will be 3 hours and something long. And then I did an analysis of the Boulez interpretation of each individual scene. And I took the original Boulez time frame as the basis of composition for ParZeFool. And each section is remade in the time frame of Boulez. And which is sometimes easier, sometimes a little bit more difficult. So you can imagine a building being erased, and you have just the fundamentals of the building and the plan, the original plan, and you reconstruct a new building on this old plan, on the old fundamentals of this old ancient building. So the whole thing has 3 acts and a Vorspiel and whatever, following Wagner's measures more or less. Then the other thing was the text. I took Wagner's text, and as we just heard in the original Wagner, it's anytime I listen to this, I hear the loops. I hear the issue of repetition, how important this is in the logic of Wagner. So what I did is I picked out the hook lines of each scene and the most important text fragments, and replaced the narrative by loops. So I just looped one word or one sentence till the loops reached the prescribed length of the scene. Said very, very simple now. It's the mechanics of the loop machinery replaces the narrative structure, the original narrative structure of Wagner. Then the next thing is the harmony.
Harmonics, yeah, that's
Harmony. And this is a technique I actually started to develop at this time, 1617, which was derived from my experience with FM synthesizers. Because FM synthesizers, which I have been using in my pieces since the 90s, use frequency modulation, and frequency modulation can be simulated by adding and subtracting frequencies. So doing some difference, using different tones and multiples of different tones, and using multiples of summation tones and summation tones. And you can create a FM spectrum by doing this. But instead of synthesizing the spectrum from scratch, I took the original 4-part Wagner harmony and calculated. If there are 4 voices, you have 6 pair of voices. And if you have 6 pair of voices, you get 6 difference tones and 6 summation tones. So you have 12 new frequencies arising from the original Wagner harmony, which distort if you bring this in the foreground, because these different tones are actually more psychoacoustic phenomenon, and which you hear if you have some really bad, too bad recorder players, 2 kids playing the recorder together. You hear these different tones very, very expressively. It sounds really bad. All these different tones. But on the other hand, the technique of different tones was also known to Bach, for example. And it's something, it's a spectral enrichment of the sound. And also, if I make the different tones louder than the original harmony, I again overwrite the original Wagner with this layer of spectral frequencies.
actually
And this can be closer and farther. Sorry?
Yeah, actually, we heard this in the beginning of this 2 music examples already. So you have this da 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 go to da.
Yeah.
It's already there. So it's okay. It's the harmonic perspective.
It's all already there, and the trick is all again that naturally these frequencies are somewhere in the spectral range. So they are all microtonal frequencies. And that's why I had 3 synthesizers on stage, microtonal synthesizers.
That's another question. Sorry, Bernhard, but about orchestration, about the instruments you're using. So you have really a saxophone, you have drum set, you have synthesizers for, of course, like you said, calculating this extra harmonics. So how important was the instrumentation to also override or to make it new, contemporary, or what was the purpose to
yes, this is funny, because when I suggested to bring in a jazz player and a bass player and a drum set into the composition, Sven Hartberger, who was a very important contributor to the origin of the whole project, and with whom I was in discussion all the time during the creation, he said, "Why do you need this?" And I said, there is so much sensuality, so much sex and eroticism in this piece. So I need this energetic engine, and especially, for example, with the Blumenmädchen, where you play this wonderful dialogue with the Blumenmädchen on soprano saxophone. for me, it was evident and necessary to bring in sensuality and the intensity of drive and beat in this piece. And if you hear the original Wagner, there is already a lot of drive there in the orchestra. It's really steaming. The orchestra is steaming. And what did Wagner with the orchestra? He just took the orchestra of the contemporary 80, 50 romantic orchestra and just expanded it and amplified it. Yeah. He added new instruments. He made it huger, louder, larger, and expanded the frequency range. And so I said, let's go for this, expand the orchestra. I had the synthesizers playing in the sub bass, subwoofers, yeah. And I had the saxophone as a expressive solo instrument, because you play also in the wonderful chords of the Klangforum, integrated into the chords of the Klangforum. But then this voice, actually this expression, which was in former years, it was the tenor voice, which did this expressive thing, and you do it in the piece. You are the representative of expression, intensity, and eroticism in the piece. And this was, for me, it was a very clear decision. And also, it's also a thing, I think a music sociologist consideration, that for me, in my pieces, it's very important to bring in influences from all kinds of scenes of music scenes, also from underground improvisation, jazz music. This is all. Evident. I love all this. I love all this, and I would not like to exclude all this. It's, for me, exclusion is something terrible.
Yeah, of course you can. The instrumentation is evident in your other music as well. And we are about, I don't want to cut this, we are allowed to talk as much as we want, but there's still an ending. So I have a little bit of an last question.
Already?
Yeah. Yeah, but you're not sitting in there, at home. Somebody's watching us. The last question about the reaction. I mean, you're talking about the ideas and the harmonic structure. Do you have any major reactions, or really probably counteractions? You could tell us what happened after this premiere, because I can imagine to touch this huge topic asks for really strong reactions. So could you briefly tell us what happened in this case?
I think when you listen to ParZeFool, you will very easily see it was never meant as a provocation. I'm not a provocative person. I'm not interested in provocation. But I was conscious that to touch the holy cow would not go unhindered, so to say. And first of all, we were sold out everywhere, in Berlin, in Vienna. And there was an immense interest for the work. I have to confess, a lot of this interest went to Jonathan Meese. It was evident. I was sometimes really a side figure of his in the production, but I did not care, because for me the music was so crucial and so important. The whole project was so important for me. I did not care very much. But then the reaction came, and I would say it was violent. The reaction was really violent. There were death threats, and there were newspapers who wrote such violent attacks on the piece. And one of these newspapers I liked most, because they published 2 reviews of the piece which were complete contradictions, who went in one direction and went into the other. And there was one misunderstanding in the whole reception of Parsifal since in Vienna, not in Berlin, in Vienna, there were a couple of people who went into Theater an der Wien, who believed they would get the original Parsifal. And these guys were really pissed off. They were really very angry and hateful. And naturally, the composer gets it. Yeah, sure, this is very clear. But what to say? You have to live with it. And I would not be hindered by such things to do projects like that. And I was experienced in the years before, when I did the Bruckner in Donaueschingen. I was threatened by orchestra musicians.
Yeah, of course I can imagine.
I was really threatened by orchestra musicians, and
it's another touch of another Holy Grail, probably.
Yeah. It's like that. And I remember when I did the Puccini variations, there was another guy from Italy who threatened me with killing me and whatever. I think it's this whole discussion that we are in a kind of temple, and people are praying to monuments like the Egyptians pray to the pyramids and to the Sphinx, and anything which touches this symbol of stability and foreverness is considered an enemy and is being attacked violently. But this is nothing very new, and I always remember this quotation by Gustav Mahler, who says, "It's not the question of praying to the ashes. It's about carrying on the fire." And in this regard, a lot of things which happen nowadays in Austrian in Austrian culture is praying to the ashes. That you have to say that.
Dear Bernhard, I think this was a nice quote at the ending. So
yeah,
we have to stop soon.
Yeah, I know.
It would be nice to talk more with you, of course.
My pleasure.
I tell the audience or the viewers, thank you for watching our weekly Klangforum talk on IDAGIO. So then I say goodbye for now, and you have email, so somebody could contact you in person if you want. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Bernhard, for taking time with me.
Thanks, Gerald. Let's do it again.
Yes. Okay, bye-bye.
Repetitions. Yeah, let's do it again.